Sorry, if you wanna, you have to put it in.
Yeah, they haven't yet.
You might wanna move the gavel.
Good evening. Would stand for the pledge, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks to the veterans and their families tonight. Well appreciated.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I like it too, but. Leave it to me. I'm always used to doing that.
At this time, if there's any citizen input, you're welcome to speak. Questions, concerns? All ready? We have in our packets this evening the minutes for July the 21st regular council meeting. And we also have August 6th work session minutes. Not in there?
No. Sorry. Oh, baby.
I had emailed those to all the council members.
You did, it was just me, I was busy and didn't get mine, but you did. I don't have it.
It's not in the pack, I emailed it to all of them.
Well, how are we gonna know if you don't call it self, if I don't want to email every day?
It was just getting things done and everything else, I just emailed it to all of them.
Well, how are we gonna vote on something we don't know what it is?
You go find it.
You earned some copies.
So that it's gonna get email from now on and not a copy? Well, I mean, some people, I know y'all like hard copies, but I don't think Sandra knew that. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think she knew it. I know Susan did. Just have to get mad at me, girl. I can blame it on the cow. Or the bull, should I say. Yeah, the bull.
In case you're wondering, we lost an air handler, so it's a little warm in here. Coming tomorrow at 8 o'clock, I think that last lightning storm took out the pump at our spring, and they're hopefully going to have it back tomorrow.
Which is not good for menopause, I might add.
And now we have this one also. And I think it's been bad a couple of days, but I haven't been spending a lot of time back on this side of the building, so I would have noticed sooner. Sorry, on big barn fans.
I gotta know we should have. We don't have a fan anymore.
And they don't help. Those are heat lamps.
Oh,
We can turn them off.
Yeah, they're like,
We can work in the dark. No, better not for visibility.
there we go.
People might not say they can see it good. Like anybody wanna look at my mug.
still late enough for the camera back there.
Yeah, you still got a red light.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not the red light, it's still on, so we're still recording.
Louis, what are you doing?
Can we come back to the minutes, or we have to do that first?
Well, Sandra's not here right now, so you don't know. Not
Yes,
here.
the problem is the person who's taking minutes.
No, Ron, that's correct.
I don't even know why I asked for that. I can't write my heart. There was one time, so we're there. Oh, you have to be at work. Can I mark the cake? It was probably, she had to. I know. There was a guy that was farming out there for a couple years ago. They required to like, check. You didn't have to check it yet, but you thumb around. He had right on. So he was like, they argued so much that he almost sued him. One, that's what we have, because this neighbor.
Oh, yeah, it's already, the numbers
You
are.
let the man use the last close. That thing's
So these two are not related? Really? That's strange. So is that, which one is Jordan Black? This one? Okay.
Can you not read this? There you go, man. Well, you make copies
So
for
we're not voting?
well,
Thanks, Sandra.
thank you, Sandra. Y'all are welcome. And you still didn't get rid of us.
Yeah.
Cheryl, do you think it's done that good? You hadn't seen it fun, since I watched it a couple times ago. Don't it? I don't think I want to do anything different. I think I like it. There you go. She probably would.
Any questions on this?
Mayor, I have a comment on August 6th, 2020 minutes. City Public Works Building, the reason Mr. Miller is still working on this, supposed to use proceeds from the sale of Mexican Twinwood Road to improve the Public Works Building. That statement is true, but I would like this to reflect that we asked the family to have the request for information ready by the end of August to be released in September. That's some of the comments I have.
Council, will we need to amend this and approve it at another session?
You can actually approve this today, but my recommendation would be that Councilman Venables make a motion to amend the minutes and approve them as amended to reflect the correction Councilman Venables wants.
But we will have to add it in this, correct?
I'm sorry?
We'll have to add it to this.
Yes, but it doesn't have to be amended and then brought back to council. It can be verbally amended and then the minutes can be updated to reflect what the actual motion was in council tonight.
Okay.
So we can't make a motion to accept the corrected, the amended minutes?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying you make a motion
Oh,
to approve the minutes as amended with the following amendment.
oh, okay, I wasn't listening.
So do I have a motion on August 6th?
Excuse me, before you make the motion, I didn't understand what you wanted to amend.
The August 6th minute says, August 6th minutes, section C, doesn't say anything about, requesting sound,
Development Committee?
Public Works Building on August 6th.
Okay.
And that was a request for Sam to get information.
The request was to have Sam finish the RFI so it can be released in September. We voted on it back in March, I believe it was. There's no other questions. I made the motion to approve August 6th minutes with that correction.
And I'll second it.
All those in favor of the amended August 6th minutes? The motion carries. Unanimous. Any questions on the July 21st minutes?
Motion to approve July 21st minutes as written.
I'll second.
All those in motion? In favor? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Unanimous. Vote for it and slip. At this time, I'd just like to give a little update on some of the things here at City Hall. And I've given it a lot of thought, and I literally asked myself, what is my purpose here? And I still think that I'm true to the 3 promises that I made when I took this office. And that is to do the best job that is possible, to the best of my abilities, not to lie to people, and I think I've done very well on that, and that I would always keep the city and the citizens' best interest at heart. So, with that said, I just think that maybe I need to try a little bit harder. But I think that everyone, including the citizens, really need to take a look and ask themselves the same thing. And if it's a matter of volunteering for recognition, it doesn't always happen. Running for office to get the recognition, no different. So, I've made up my mind that I will continue to do the best job that I can possibly do, and I'll move forward day after day and try to keep up my promise to the citizens. The second thing on the agenda is, at this point, and I may reconsider at some point in the future, but the Finance Committee will be dissolved, and I'm open to reconsidering it at a future date, when if the opportunity presents itself. As far as the city is concerned, and I know a lot of the citizens know that there's been smoke tests being done the last couple of days. I spoke with Jordan, and he's been out with the crew every day. They did a half a day yesterday. They found a couple of fairly big concerns, but nothing that can't be corrected with some work. Today, they really didn't find much of any problems. Some of them were cleanouts at residents that didn't have a cap on, so the smoke came out of the cleanouts. But as far as major, there were only 2 locations at this point, and one he felt was where a lot of storm runoff was getting in because of the storm cover was tipped. It was down in a overflow ditch, and so when we had massive rains, it he felt was a big reason for a lot of runoff to get into that pipe. And the city pays based on a meter reading. All sewage going into the county plant is metered. And so we would see spikes when we have heavy rains. And he feels that those can be corrected. The one in the ditch would be a matter of extending that and putting a new manhole cover on it and just doing a little bit of build-up work. The other one is going to take a little bit of digging. But tomorrow they hope to wrap it up in about 3/4 of a day. He figures they should be able to finish. They've got Jefferson Street in Providence, and they've done Sunset, and they've done Woodbury, and all of Jefferson going that direction, and a lot of side roads in Broad Street. So they've covered a lot of territory in a day and a half, and I figure they should finish in another pretty good day tomorrow. But at this point, it's a lot of good news, I think, for the city, and that was our whole purpose for having this done, to try and identify issues and hopefully keep our meter at a steady level so that the city's not paying penalties for that overage. So that's really all I have to update you on. Like I said, for the most part, it's pretty good news. At this point, Councilwoman Carly has a few things to discuss.
I do, and I'm going to skip around just a little bit if you'll just, everybody be patient with me a little bit. I had a conversation with the mayor yesterday, and I told him that I wanted to be put on the agenda for a couple of things. We talked about a lot of things. So some of the things that are on here, I think, was just a misunderstanding of why it's on here. We talked about the finance committee in length, and about him dissolving it and maybe later picking it up, but I really didn't want to discuss it at a council meeting. We talked about, employees in ethical situations, but I really didn't want to talk about it at a council meeting. I had no reason to. And we talked about where it says salary caps on certain employees. I want to make sure I make myself very clear when I say what I'm fixing to say. Back when we were doing budget talks, and I believe at one point, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Betty, Mr. Gary, myself, all at one time thinks that there needs to be a salary guide to go by. In other words, you got to have positions. You got to have where these positions start. How much do we start this position at? How do we do raises? How much do we give raises? Do we cap off these salary caps? It really needs to be in place for any government, in any business. If you have any type of business, unless it's a small business, I still think it needs to be done. And right now, before I go any further with the rest of this, does anybody have anything to add as far as the salary guide? Do we think it's a good idea? Do we think we need to move forward? Because I think that, the mayor is looking at future municipalities. I think he talked to me earlier about things like that. So if anything, if there's any disagreements with me, I'd like to discuss discuss it just a little bit?
There's a guide on the Department of Community Affairs to go by. You can download that. I think this might be something better discussed in a personnel committee,
We don't have a
situation.
personnel committee anymore.
I'm just saying, if the personnel committee was to reconvene, or,
Okay.
it might be better discussed in that environment.
Okay.
Also, at some point, you're gonna look at the qualifications of the person and the candidate,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times they exceed or well exceed the qualifications for the position. And in that case, sometimes people are compensated either A, for their education, B, for their experience, or C, both of the situations. And a lot of times that would be at the discretion of the decision makers, whether it be the mayor or the council.
Correct.
And I'll be honest with you, when we hired the chief, man, wow, I was like, that's a lot of money for a chief of police. And when he interviewed exceptionally well. Only hang up with the chief is that how much money he was making.
How much is that?
How much he was asking for was the problem. All right, so he interviewed well. We selected him. We agreed to pay him what we're paying him, and lo and behold, after enough time had passed, the chief had proven his worth, and he said he did what he said he was going to do, and we found out that he was who he said that he was. And now my position on that has completely changed because I've given him an opportunity to prove his worth. And I think sometimes it takes time for that to transpire, but when it does, and if you're in a position to see the value, it's the value that I'm looking for. We have not always gotten the value out of who was here, who was doing certain positions. We haven't as a city as a whole, but I think right now we are getting the value that we're expecting. The people who are, they say they are, and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's just my opinion on who's getting paid what here in the city.
I think for any future hires, we need to have a pay scale in place. Places I've worked for, the way we handle education and years of experience, you have a pay scale. So, for instance, in my job position, I have 15 years of experience that would fall in line with the pay scale. So you have starting pay, you have years of experience built into your pay scale, and then you have basically where it tops out at. And that way, any future hires, number one, it helps the budget. So you got some idea what you're paying people, what they can start off at. And then the other thing is that it keeps the pay fair and equitable amongst all employees, or at least I feel it does. So I definitely think we need to look into a pay scale and not only that, but also job descriptions and updating their job descriptions.
And I'll agree with that 100%.
I agree. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we, Mr. Mayor. I'm with everything said about that.
We do have some, a lot of the job descriptions on file. But I will look into the pay.
I just think it's a good idea to have that in place. The other thing is on here is to discuss the city clerk position. As everybody knows, Miss Susan left, sadly. Miss Susan had to leave to help take care of her husband. We have not, as of this moment, advertised for a city clerk position. I know we've got 3 ladies working as hard as they can, and I think that it's time. We need to go ahead and start advertising. however the mayor sees fit to advertise at this point is on him. I know that he makes the recommendations and the council does the voting, and I respect that decision-making process. I just think that it's time that we start seeking out. So far we haven't, and we need to get a city clerk in here. You know, we're budgeted to pay one, and we need to get one in here. And that's open to if anybody has anything to say about that.
Well, right now, we have the 3 people in here, and they're doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if one of them has to
Yeah.
be out? Short term, long term,
Right.
then everything's gonna be packed back on 2.
Right.
And I will agree that if we advertise tomorrow, it won't be too soon. We need a city clerk.
Well, I will say this much, I did talk to the mayor about before the meeting, and I know he's gonna, well, we talked about it, he's gonna, put on with the GLGA somewhere else. But he's gonna start advertising, for that pretty soon. So I just wanted to make, clear to the citizens that, no, we don't have a replacement for Miss Susan. Been asked by several people, yes, she is going to be replaced. Hopefully, we will get somebody that is just as good as her, and have a harmonious, and everybody can work in harmony here.
And another thing, I think, when we do advertise, when we get the applications in, I think the council should be allowed to have a say. We don't get the final say, but we should at
We
least.
do get the final say. He recommends we vote.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, but he still has to do the recommendation. you
Oh,
know,
okay.
And I did ask him if we could, look over the resume.
Yeah, I mean,
That's-
at least, take a look and
Yeah,
see what we're getting.
that's strictly up to the mayor. He has to make that decision. Anybody else wants, chime in about it, or, I know, the mayor's been under some pressure here lately. I understand, so I don't wanna put any more on him. So, you got anything to say, Ms. Hattie?
I sure do.
Okay.
I agree with you all wholeheartedly. I would like to see some information my own self. I would like for the council to start having some say-so about the decisions that's being made.
I have to agree with that too. Joy, you have anything? No. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any public comment?
I'd like to say something, Mayor. Cheryl Venable. I do encourage the council to have a pay scale, job titles, and job descriptions. And it's so important, number one, so when you do hire people, you know what radius. You don't have to say you're only going to get this. A lot of times if you look at jobs in the paper for hires or online, you will say a range of payment, and it does say according to education, qualification, or years in that environment. I worked for government for almost 18 years, and we ended up doing a wage study, and it kind of shows you where you need to be in your own environment, and it also helps you have a scale for raises each year. Whether you do years of service or you get a certification. So each job performance, you might have started out as clerk 1, but then you went to school and you got these qualifications, and you go up to clerk 2. Well, then they know where your raise should go. So I think as a government or as a corporate, I would absolutely would want that if I was running a business to know how I was going to budget it. But it's also good for the council, I think, and or anyone that is going to be hiring to review all applicants and to make sure you're doing follow-throughs as far as the applicants. If they're going to get an increase in wages because of school, you want to verify all of this. And you want it part of their employee file. This can only enhance your employees to want to get education, I know right now with COVID, it's been hard for any schools right now for these employees to continue any kind of government education. But when it does get a little bit better, you know, education is power for any entity, whether it's private or public. An educated workforce is a better workforce, I do believe. But I would very much like to see a wage, salaries, job titles, and job description.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? At this time, we've talked about this at the work session, and I think that it's gotten to the point, this section down here on Broad Street, I really truly believe that it's getting worse by the week. I hit that every week. I drive down there in different vehicles to see how it's progressing, and it is progressing more and more. It is a metal pipe. So I truly believe that this falls under an emergency type situation. We have 3 bids. We discussed them at the work session, and under the emergency, you know, we have to be prepared if and when the school buses start bringing children across that road. Right now, the buses are running dry routes, and they are hitting that every single day. Trucks go down there, and we are going to have a situation, and I believe it's going to put the city at a liability, and we have 2 choices: fix it or close the road. So, with all that being understood and discussed, at this point in time, our policy book and I believe it's finance policy allows for the lowest bid to be recommended, in which case we have 3 bids. 2 of those were at the site, did the studies, did the draw-ups, and discussed with our street crew what was necessary to do it. All 3 of these bids include a storm wall or something of that nature on both ends that collects the water and direct it and prevent washout. The $178,900 bid was just sent in. It was thrown out there. They never came to look at it. It just basically, you know, if they get it, they get it. And it, as you can see, is double, you know, the other bid. So the McDaniel's utility is the $81,410. The McDaniel's grading and hauling, I know they're out of Winder. In all the things that I've checked, they're not related to each other, but there's $10,000 difference between the 2 of those. My recommendation, and it's up to the council to approve, is to do the $81,400 bid under the emergency situation.
You need a motion?
I'd like a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion. We hire McDaniel Utilities at the price of $81,410 to repair the road at Broad Street.
9 seconds.
All those in favor?
I have a question there.
Go ahead.
Mr. Campbell, I had spoken with you about this, and you had recommended that we follow the policy and go out for 7 bids. Where do we stand with that?
So there's 2, you asked me 2 questions, and I'll go ahead and share the answers to those 2 questions for the benefit of the council. One of the questions was whether there's any kind of conflict of interest because of the relationship between these bidders and an employee of the city. The answer to that question is no. There is no conflict of interest. Conflict of interest rules when it comes to voting relate to the council not just city employees. And as long as there's legitimate reasons for accepting a bid, the relationship does not disqualify someone. The question that you're getting at now, though, is about the implementation of the application of the financial policy. With construction projects over $25,000, you are supposed to have competitive sealed bids that are open at one time. They're advertised for a certain period of time in paper, and then you open the bids and you can vote on what you believe is the best of those. You're not required to accept the lowest, you're not required to accept the highest. The city council can weigh various factors as they decide. The exception to that rule is when an emergency situation exists. The council has to decide whether or not this is an emergency situation for starters. Emergency situation is defined as a situation or condition that presents imminent risk to the life, health, and safety of the citizens of the city of Statham. If you believe that we are in an emergency situation, the financial policy allows us to forego the competitive sealed bidding process. But the city should do whatever it can to try to promote competitive bidding or competition in the bidding process, even in that emergency situation, as much as possible. Getting 3 bids in an emergency situation, frankly, in my experience, is pretty good. So in making this decision, you're actually making 2 decisions. Number 1, you have to decide whether it's an emergency situation. Second, if you conclude that it is, then you can vote to approve one of these.
Okay, so can I amend my motion?
You don't have to, the motion does not have to find an emergency situation.
Oh, okay.
By voting to approve it, you are effectively saying
Okay.
that you agree it's an emergency situation.
So did not, Mayor, you said that the school buses are doing dry runs now, and the road is steady, or street is steady decaying? Would you consider that an emergency?
Absolutely. It risks, the health or safety of the citizens of the state of school bus or wrecked. Heck, one car, it doesn't have to be a school bus.
Yeah, when the school bus is empty, except for the bus driver's children, it's gonna be even more weight.
There's no clear bright line rule, but that certainly is in the ballpark.
My question was, is that, what fund would this be coming out of? I was under the understanding we didn't have enough money in the fund.
I believe we have 300,000 something
Oh, okay,
in
so-
the street fund.
In the street, okay.
Yeah, and we have 3 major projects in this city. Now, those other 2 are not a critical situation, so we could do the bid on those, sealed bid, and follow a different guideline than this. But my concern is you have a bus of 30 kids, and that bus tips over because if the road gives away that particular day, I don't think it would bode well for the city of Statham.
Yeah.
Bad.
So,
I went over it yesterday, it's pretty bad.
yeah.
So, Mr. Campbell, legally speaking, you think the city would be covered if we voted on this tonight underneath an emergency situation?
Under the emergency provision of the financial policy, you can make that decision, yes.
We had a motion. Who seconded it? You seconded. Any other questions, or all those in favor? Unanimous. I will make the necessary contact tomorrow. Try and get that underway as soon as possible. In our packet, we also have a planning and zoning fee schedule. This was probably an oversight on my part when we were voting for permit changes and a lot of the things that we voted that had to do with our unified build code and our maps. So I was talking to Jerry White, and he said that I had a question about something, and he said that you all didn't vote the planning and zoning fee schedule into effect. So he recommended that we get that on the agenda and passed as soon as possible to bring us our fees in line with the other municipalities. municipalities. Not all of them were changed, some of them have remained the same. Some of this was recommendations of Jerry Weiss, and some of this was also recommended by Hal Chipwood, I believe, that we needed to bring our fees more in line. Does anyone have any questions on the schedule?
Mayor, we all ran on transparency, and one of the things that, when I was running, that I took issue with was not having things posted for public input. And I think that we should post the fee schedule at least on our website before we vote on it. I think we can do a better job of trying to let the citizens know before we do increases. And I realize most of this is going to be, the impact's going to be on developers and builders, but I would make a motion that we table this until the September council meeting. And in that motion, put the new fee schedule on the website. The proposed fee schedule on the website.
Yes,
It is on the website.
Okay.
and has been,
And it
correct?
has been, yes, sir.
The new fee schedule has been on the website.
Yeah. This schedule,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
How long has it been on the website?
Well, I believe the June 30th meeting is the meeting that, the council approved the land use map and the Unified Development Code. This was already done and taken, this was already completed by that meeting, and it shouldn't have been included on that agenda. It was just an oversight.
This went back to May, correct?
Yes, so it had actually been posted since the very 1st of July, assuming that this was going to be on the agenda at the June 30th regular council meeting, the special call meeting that you guys had. So it's actually been on the website since July 1st.
Did we not already vote on the fee schedule?
We did, but this was,
You did on the
this was
building
not in
fee
there.
schedule,
Okay.
but the building fee schedule and the planning and zoning fee schedule are two separate schedules. And we had it completed at the same time, but we chose not to approve it until we approved the Unified Development Code. So the planning and zoning fee schedule was put off until the new Unified Development Code was adopted. So they were supposed to have been adopted concurrently, they just,
And I truly believe that it was until Jerry brought it to my attention, so we went through our records and found we voted on everything except this, but this was already done,
Yes.
and I believe it was May. It has been posted for some time.
so,
I still stand by the motion. I would like for us to at least have one more work session, so if anybody does want to have any public input on it.
Well, I'll second your motion because in the beginning of the year, our meetings got changed, so we had more time to get the stuff and to study it and look at it. I got this late yesterday. And no, I've not had time to even go through it. You can't absorb this much overnight. So, my motion is to table it.
Mayor,
I agree with it, Gary has the motion.
I'm
I
not
agree with it.
sure of that meeting date, but we can discuss it on the, is it September
Third,
3rd workshop? And then have it for a vote on, would it be the 15th? Is that correct?
yes. So the motion is to table this until the September 3rd work session, and it's seconded by Council Lyle. All those in favor? Motion carries. Also in your packet is the CARES Act grant funding. And this is coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to refer to it as. And this gives the municipalities an opportunity to recoup some of the expenses that were incurred by paying employees to stay home when they've been exposed, and I'm not sure all of the total details. Would you like to shed any light on it, April?
Sure. So this is a grant that, a federal grant that we would be receiving, and there are certain requirements that the city is required to do in order to accept the grant, such as provide receipts and proof of the expenditures that we have accepted or taken on the responsibility of due to COVID. And there is still some gray area as to the expenditures that we can use the grant for, and that's something that the counselor and I have been kind of going back and forth on. But public safety salaries can be included. If we had to purchase computers in order for employees to be able to work at home, items like that would be included. I believe that our grant is upwards of $148,000. So we just have to be able to provide receipts for all of the expenditures that we have incurred due to Corona. If there's even if it's something that we have already purchased, the face mask, I know the police department had to spend a pretty great deal of money on sanitizers and all that type of thing, paying people to come in and clean the building and sanitize the building. All of those types of expenses would be covered by this grant, and we just have to be able to provide the proof that we had actually paid for those items. In the event that we submit a receipt for something and they deny it, we just don't get to use that grant money for it. It's something that we've already paid for. So we're just trying to recoup some of the costs over the last several months, and I believe this goes through, is it December 31st? So we can still use these funds through the end of the year if another expenditure comes up.
Point of clarification, actually there's phases. And the first phase has already been dispersed, and we have to spend that money by the end of September.
Yes, September 30th.
But we're allowed to, again, as April correctly pointed out, this is kind of catch-up money. We've already paid these expenditures. This is just reimbursing us for those expenditures. And one example that I know the council will like to hear is the purchase of police vehicles. That's specifically provided for in the CARES Act grant, which is if you purchase vehicles so that officers don't have to share vehicles, that can be a reimbursed expenditure. And considering that the city just purchased 2, these funds can be used for that.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Man from heaven.
Absolutely, I would love it.
So that would be, in our case, a monthly purchase lease agreement.
Correct.
So can we pay for the vehicles, or does these funds have to be?
You have to use the funds by the end of September. So and I think this is probably the widest use, but this is more of an accounting question than a legal question, would be monies that we've already paid from March 30th.
From March 30th through the end of September.
Pay those first, and then anything that comes after that, potentially paying off lease or what have you.
If we pay it off,
We can consider that
we
in
can
the
get the
future,
whole thing back.
but I would start paying off.
I would start with other things.
Yeah, but
The
I mean,
reason why I say that is because if for some reason, they look at it as a non-reimbursable expense as far as the police vehicles, maybe because we'd already budgeted those items, that maybe, I don't know, just, they could come back with any denial of any, we'll say, any reimbursable thing that we would want to do. In that event, we've already budgeted the police vehicle lease payment for them, and we will be for the next multiple years. If for some reason we use that money and we pay it off, and we pay, what is it, just say $80,000 worth of vehicles, and then all of a sudden they come back and they say, okay, well, that is no longer a reimbursable expense. you know, now we've just, you know, put a dent in our budget by paying that off because we're, you know, we can't replace that money. So I would absolutely agree with Mr. Campbell, and that, you know, let's use the money on things that we have already paid for first. We have several salaries, you know, that we can,
Yeah, I know we have
reimburse that
police's
line item.
salary that was out.
So, a little bit of background. This is money that came from the federal government that was then given to the state, and the states had to come up with their own framework for how it was to be dispersed. There's been a tremendous amount of back and forth between GMA and the governor's office, laying out how this is gonna happen. As you can imagine, there's been a multitude of questions from the cities about what is and is not an approved expenditure. There's been a running Q&A guide through GMA and through the governor's office that they've done jointly, that they literally add new questions to almost weekly. And to Glenn's point, there's a lot of uncertainty still. There's still a lot of contours that we're not 100% sure on. So to her point, it's better to reimburse the ones we know for sure now, and then we can get creative later once we know. Once we knock out what we know we can knock out.
Yeah.
Let's be creative.
I'm assuming there's a finite amount of funds available, and it's just being dispersed across the state.
Yeah,
Is
just
it first
based on
come, first
population.
served?
No, every city has been given their proportionate share based upon population numbers. So the amount that has already been advanced or is approved for advance for the first phase for the city of Statham is $44,584.52. That's the portion that has to be used by September 30th. The total, which that amount would be included in this, is $148,615.08.
So an additional
104.
Okay.
All of that's in your agenda packet.
It's on page 21
Mm-hmm.
of the terms.
This is a ton of information to read through. I guess my next question, do we have, does it give a timeline of when we'll know what they're going to pay? Or, for instance, we've turned in receipts for reimbursement. Is there a timeline of repayment?
So it's not a repayment. The money is literally dispersed to the city. The city uses the money and then submits a report to the state saying this is how we used it.
Okay.
And the city stamps it, says.
So we already get the money.
Correct.
I
think they're gonna automatically deposit it into our general fund.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
so,
great.
so then it's just a matter of us possibly getting audited to see what we spend it on.
Yes.
There's audit requirements in here. We're required to submit reports to the state for oversight. But again, based upon just the information that we do know, we pretty easily have $148,000 covered through police salaries, through equipment, through various things in Plank Party.
The public works salaries, because the guys kind of rotated, you know.
Where will that money be put? What fund will be put in? Will we have a separate fund? General fund?
That'll go into the general fund.
Okay. And just, I know that's out of context right in a second, but remember we talked about the selling house coming up pretty soon? So, soon we're gonna have to talk about a fund for that.
Yeah, that'll just go right into the general fund as well.
It should go in a separate fund for the police department.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, I think we talked briefly about it, but anyway, that was just something I should have brought that up later, but anyway.
Yeah, that would be allocated differently because that's a sale of an asset. So, that's just gonna be handled differently.
Okay.
Yeah, but it would still go into the general fund.
Okay.
Ms. Lane, will you be creating a new line item just for this particular unit or particular fund balance that we?
We have had a running balance between work that April has done in the budget and what Sandra has provided, anything that we've had since this all started, whether it was the street department doing rotation so they didn't have direct contact. Police department had a couple of officers that had to be out for 14 days. That was all earmarked under COVID-19, correct?
Yes, when it comes to the salaries and stuff, yes, it is. So we were a little proactive in that, and we created line items and then did the payroll We even created, a separate account for when we go to place the hours of an employee that is gonna go directly into the COVID-19.
That would even go for the, didn't y'all at one time, somebody have to alternate days here?
Yeah, we.
Yeah.
So that would go cover that too.
That's already been all allocated.
See, that's good.
But I guess my question is, we'll have a line item as a new revenue just for this.
Yeah.
I'll have to create something, yeah, so, because even in the happenstance that we don't use all the money, you know, we do have to refund that back to the state, but if we keep it separately and then I make the journal entries based on what expenses we've had and we put that money back into that expenditure, that line item, you know, then, the money that would be left over from that grant would still be in that revenue account.
Okay. Can you provide us with the items, that the mayor was talking about for COVID-19?
Yes, I'll have to sit down and work with, probably individual departments on that. You know, I'll have to work with Captain Davis and the chief on that, and Sandra and I will have to sit down, because everybody spent the money on different things to cover COVID costs.
Yeah, when you get that information, you provide us the report, please.
Yes, it'll probably, it'll probably be a few days, the chief's not even here at the moment, so, but Sandra and I can get working.
Whenever it gets completed, I realize there's gotta be some legwork on there.
Yes, but, I will add that GMA has kind of been after us about getting this agreement signed. So that's one of the reasons why, you know, it was placed on the agenda,
Short notice.
for tonight's meeting.
I guess my last question is, Mr. Campbell, there's nothing in this contract, and obviously that would keep us from agreeing to it.
Nothing that you haven't already heard tonight, such as the audit requirements, and, as Mike correctly pointed out, we don't spend the money, we have to reimburse it to the state. But again, as long as it's kept separate, there shouldn't be a problem. It's more of an accounting problem than a legal issue.
So do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Unanimous? At this point, I would make a motion to go to executive session.
I'll make a motion to move into this executive session.
This is for personnel.
I'll second it.
Those in favor? All in favor? All right. All right, I'm long-winded. I'd like a motion to come out of executive session.
I'll motion.
Y'all both did it, okay.
It doesn't matter.
Who did what?
Betty will do the motion, Ms. Hattie did the second. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Mayor, real quick,
Yes.
the mayor and city council of the city of Statham adjourned into closed session to discuss matters exempt from the Open Meetings Act, specifically involving the appointment, hiring, firing, reprimand, discipline, performance of city personnel. No official votes were taken during the executive session. A copy of the affidavit and resolution will be included with the minutes.
Thank you.
All right, I make a motion to terminate Sam Powell as the Director of Public Works.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? At this time, I would like to appoint Jordan McDaniel to serve as the Director of Public Works on a 6-month interim basis. And I'd like a motion from the council for that decision.
I'll make the motion.
Okay? Second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? It's unanimous. Now, a motion to adjourn,
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
council.
Who seconded? Patty? Oh, well, Dwight had his hand up too.
Patty did first.
Patty was first.
Thank you. Since he got smacked, you knew.
All those in favor? Now we have them all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All night. Thank you.
I'm out here on limb. Look, I broke
I don't
the
blame my husband now.